My first love hated me for 10 years. He firmly believed that I was bullying my delicate and innocent little sister. He watched infuriately as I was bullied by the real bullies. 12 years later, he personally engineered a car accident. He witnessed me struggling on the verge of death but refused to save me. All of this is your own doing. You owe it all to Viper. I looked into his cold eyes and gradually lost all hope. When I opened my eyes again, I was back in my senior year of high school. I let go of my obsession with my first love and let the two of them be affectionate and entangled with each other. After I left him, he was so lost that he chased me all the way to the UK and begged me in a trembling voice. Phoenix, I regret it. Can we go back to the way we were before? I died in a winter. I was personally killed by Fickle. The flames soared into the sky. He stood outside the flames and watched me struggle to survive in a series of car accident explosions that he had carefully planned. The tongues of fire burned my skin inch by inch. The smell of blood rushed up my throat. And the fallen clothes carried a strong smell. Driven by the instinct to survive, I reached out my hand to him. Fickle, Heckle, please save me. Okay? There was a look of fragmented contempt and disgust in Fickle's usually beautiful eyes. He shook off my hand that was right in front of him. The pain made it almost impossible for me to breathe. My eyes were filled with tears. And I asked hoarsely, why? I couldn't understand. We had known each other since kindergarten. And then we went through primary school, junior high school, senior high school, and university together. After that, we entered into marriage straight from school uniforms to wedding dresses. We had never been apart for more than 30 years. But why did he want to kill me so desperately? Why did he turn a blind eye to my plight and not save me? It was so simple. All he had to do was reach out and pull me out of the deformed car. Just one step, and I could have survived. Fickle's face was as pale as the snow on the ground, or even paler. It was he who wanted me dead, but his expression made it seem as if I had let him down. Fickle smiled, and his words were full of suppressed hatred. Phoenix, those who bully others deserve to die. Don't you owe all of this to Viper? 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 The thought of the pitiful and delicate face behind that name made me sneer. So he had gone to such lengths to kill me. All because of my sister who had died in an accident. I never expected that even after 5 years of marriage, he had never forgotten his first love in his heart. But I never imagined that he would blame me for all of this. Even for her death. Suddenly, there was an explosion. Everything in front of me became dazzling. Just like the fireworks my parents set off for me when I was a child. Student Phoenix. What's wrong with you? The towering flames disappeared. The piercing pain disappeared. On the blackboard, it was written in big letters, first mock exam. It was my senior year of high school. I didn't die. And I had even gone back to the year when I was 18. There was no campus bullying. And there was no wrong placement of love letters. Everything was back at the very beginning. I was just slowly coming back to my senses from the feeling of suffocation when the bell signaling the end of the exam suddenly rang. I immediately ran from the examination room to the nearby toilet. It was a bit dim in the toilet. I pushed open the door. The light from outside just shone on Viper. She was kneeling on the ground. Her clothes were all wet with dirty water stains. And she was sobbing softly. Viper. I called her softly. She looked up. And even the teardrop hanging on her eyelashes that hadn't fallen was exactly the same as in my previous life. Sister. Viper's voice was a bit hoarse. Instead of getting up, she crawled forward a few steps on her knees and grabbed the hem of my school uniform. It was as if I was the one bullying her. I reached out and forcefully wiped away the lipstick mark that had been maliciously smeared on her lips by others. Don't be afraid, little sister. I will definitely avenge you. Then, what out? I helped her up, hugged her gently, and rested my head on her shoulder. Smiling, I pretended not to see the triumphant look in her eyes and the camera in the corner of the toilet. Since she wanted me to bully her so much and smear me with false accusations, I would play along with her scheme. Let's see who can outwit the other. Viper was sobbing so hard that she was out of breath. And she really looked pitiful. In my previous life, I had truly felt sorry for this little sister who had been separated from our family for 17 years and had just returned home. even if it meant risking being retaliated against by others. I had to find out who was bullying her. Even on the eve of the college entrance examination, when she secretly replaced my to-be pencil, causing me to miss out on my dream university. With a simple sentence of, "I was forced by others and didn't do it on purpose," I forgave her. But I didn't expect that the scenes of me skipping the exam to find her were uploaded to the internet by someone with ulterior motives. They maliciously manipulated public opinion and created the false image that I was the bully. My parents showed extreme partiality towards her because of this baseless matter. It also shattered my chance to enter the academic circle. And I was spurned by the whole circle. I wiped away the teardrop from the corner of her eye, wanting to see how long she could keep up this self-directed act. Yes, peasant. Everything Viper had done today was a self-directed performance. In my previous life, I was reviled by everyone because of the campus bullying incident. But she received an invitation from a renowned mathematician with the filter of being a victim supported by the entire internet. I made a video call to Viper, who was studying in London, and questioned her why she didn't explain the whole truth of the matter. On the other end of the phone, she supported her chin with her hand and smiled, saying, "Sister, this is all about ability. The campus bullying incident was all my act. It worked really well, didn't it?" I was so shocked that I couldn't find the words to refute. Tears silently streamed down my face. It turned out that my pity for her was just a joke. The next second, Viper's voice turned into a sob again, saying that it was just her jealousy. "Sister, I'm sorry. I was just jealous that so many people liked you. I'm sorry." She was so changeable that I didn't know which side of her was the real one. After learning the truth, I immediately called Fickle, who was working in the laboratory, and told him the whole story. Evidence. Fickle only said 2 words. At that time, I thought he believed me. So I wiped my tears and rummaged through my things for the reporting. But no matter how hard I looked, that recording had disappeared out of thin air and I couldn't find it anywhere. So I could only tell him in a state of helplessness, explain to him, and piece together all the clues I had discovered before. My long explanations only earned me a cold "it doesn't matter." Looking back now, that "it doesn't matter" wasn't to comfort me and soothe my emotions. Rather, it didn't matter to him what happened to me. Since I couldn't produce the evidence, I could only act like a clown, angrily accusing his first love. This wouldn't affect any of Viper's interests. So, it doesn't matter. Viper. Fickle rushed into the women's restroom regardless of other people's gazes. I pulled Viper's hand away from my skirt hem and passed by the hasty Fickle. This time, I decided to care about my own fate and let go of my urge to help others. I would definitely not interfere in the affairs between the 2 of them anymore. Is sister angry with me? Did I embarrass her at school? I'm sorry. Viper's timid and cautious voice came from behind me. TSK, Hetty fulfilled my desire. Only someone with a serious lack of common sense for 10 years could say such nonsense. Don't bother with her. Fickle's originally tense and worried angry voice suddenly turned cold. I couldn't help but clench my fists, and my nails dug into the soft flesh of my palm. It hurt so much. In the evening, when I went back to the classroom to get my physics notes after the exam, I saw Viper stuffing a pink confession letter into my desk. She had a smile on her face and was talking to herself. "System. You don't understand this, do you? No one can resist the power of first love. In the future, I will become the girl that Fickle couldn't have in his youth. Just the beautiful memories alone will be enough for me to accumulate enough favorability to successfully go back home." So that's how it was. Looking at the overjoyed Viper, I also raised the corners of my lips. "Fickle, hadn't that out alone, sorry. Your true feelings are just a tool for someone else to go home. It's truly ridiculous. No wonder she died the day after the truth was revealed." Presumably, Fickle missed and worried about her so much in his heart that she had already completed her mission without having to come back and win him over. And on the day Viper went home, it was also my wedding anniversary with Fickle. He had finally come back to rest for a while after working in the research institute for 2 days. But at that moment, he saw the news of her death in a flight accident. His eyes were bloodshot, and his hand holding the TV remote control kept shaking. looking at me who was busy in the kitchen. He sneered sarcastically, "Phoenix. You must be very happy. Right?" At that time. Looking at Fickle, who was tired but still deliberately mocking me, my heart suddenly tightened. I had cooked a big table of dishes. But he didn't even look at them. He just slammed the door and left. I wiped away the tears that had fallen from the corners of my eyes. Walked into the classroom. Took out the love letter that was pressed under my books. And stuffed it into Fickle's desk behind me. "Viper. Did you make a mistake? This is Fickle's desk." Viper didn't expect me to suddenly appear in the classroom. Her eyes dark and slightly, and then filled with tears. She pinched the hem of her clothes and looked at me with an apologetic expression. "I'm sorry, sister. I like Brother Fickle. But now is a crucial moment for the college entrance examination. So I don't dare to disturb him. I just want to have this thought. So I put the love letter in your drawer. I'm sorry." Big teardrops welled up in her red eyes. And she really looked pitiful. "It's okay, Viper. If you like someone, you should be bold and say it out loud." I was just about to put my hand on her shoulder to comfort her. A fair rest slapped my hand away. I looked up. Oh, it was Fickle. "It's not sister's fault, Brother Fickle. I'm just too stupid." Viper's back couldn't help but tremble. She shrank behind Fickle, holding the hem of his clothes. She looked so small and innocent. "Phoenix. What are you trying to?" I looked into Fickle's eyes and interrupted him. "Fickle, heaven. You're so annoying." I endured the dense pain in my heart, turned around with my notes, and left the classroom. Facing the gentle breeze blowing in the corridor, I walked against the bustling crowd. I was like walking forward on the edge of an abyss, with no one I could rely on behind me. I just realized now that the world I grew up in was just a pawn in Viper's game system for winning over others. No wonder. She had easily won everyone's favor just half a year after she came to my home. But it doesn't matter. If no one cheers for me, then I will clear my own name and be my own hero. I didn't expect that without my help. Viper still couldn't catch the bullies. And they didn't even notice me. However, Fickle started to help her bully me. I was sitting in the cafeteria, eating while looking at the English booklet in my hand. I just picked up my chopsticks, ready to pick up the sweet and sour pork tenderloin that I had saved for the last. Suddenly, having so my a plate of leftovers was poured into my tray. I looked up and saw Fickle looking at me fearfully. Standing beside him was Viper with tears in her eyes. The hem of her dress that she was pinching was wrinkled beyond recognition. And as an obsessive-compulsive person, I couldn't help but frown. "I'm sorry," she explained timidly. I then looked at the girls behind her, who were laughing wildly. Oh, so she was using the excuse of being forced by others again to bully me. It's just that this time, she didn't do it herself but used Fickle's hand. "It doesn't matter." I smiled at Viper, then put the booklet in my pocket, picked up the stinky tray, and poured it over the person in the bullying group who was laughing the most arrogantly. "I helped you throw the garbage into the trash can." I stuffed the empty tray into Viper's hand and then turned around and left the cafeteria. At night, Viper knocked on my door, holding a cup of warm milk. Her eyes were red at the corners. "Sister. Brother Fickle didn't mean it during the day. He was just trying to protect me." "It's okay. I believe you didn't mean it." I took the glass from her hand with a smile in my eyes. Viper nodded, as if she had suffered a great grievance, and couldn't stop the tears from falling. Then, let out a low sigh. She sniffled and closed my door. The sobbing sound soon disappeared, replaced by a disdainful snort outside the door. "Idiot." I raised my hand and watched as the milk poured into the trash can. Indeed, an idiot. But it's still not certain who I'm referring to. In the following days, Fickle's malice towards me intensified. The red ink he splashed on my desk and chair just before class made me have to sit down, enduring the pain of my period, under the teacher's urging gaze. Or my homework that disappeared without a trace, making me have to stand in punishment at the back of the class every time. My test papers were covered with all kinds of curses. And there were dead spiders and caterpillars that suddenly appeared in my lunchbox. No matter what Fickle did, Viper would come to apologize to me every night. However, the more pitifully Viper cried, A more excessive Fickle's bullying would be the next day. I didn't cry or struggle. I just calmly sat on the red ink, stood at the back of the classroom, and threw the test papers and lunchbox into the trash can. Looking at my actions, Fickle gritted his teeth and said, "Phoenix, I want to see how long you can keep pretending." The school, as usual, posted the photos and videos of excellent students on the official account. Fickle and I caused quite a stir because of our outstanding grades. But soon, the comment section was flooded by so-called classmates from the same school, who uploaded the photos of Viper kneeling in the toilet at that time. For a moment, public opinion reversed, as expected. Good academic performance doesn't mean good character. It's hard to comment. Why hasn't the school spoken out and asked the bully's sister to drop out of school? And she's the biological sister. There was quite a lot of controversy on the internet. At that time, I had just changed into a dress and was standing at my coming-of-age party. There were many whispers around me. Is she the young lady who bullied her own sister? Viper is really pitiful. She has such a disgusting family member. All kinds of slanderous voices reached my ears. In my previous life, when I heard these harsh insults, I wanted to find Viper to defend myself. But as soon as I touched her wrist, she directly fell down the back half of the stairs. All the onlookers were stunned. Looking at Viper, whose knees were skinned and whose head was bleeding from the fall, I couldn't help but tremble. I just opened my mouth. "Sister, do you hate me so much?" She fell to the ground and questioned me weakly. I was filled with fear, afraid of hearing the scolding from the people around me again. I quickly covered my ears and ran upstairs to hide in my room. It should have been my coming-of-age party. But the protagonist became Viper. Those remarks on the internet were suppressed by my parents. But they were very disappointed in me. When they looked at me, they would just sigh deeply, shake their heads, and turn away. At that time, everyone abandoned me. They left me where I was and rushed to Viper. This time, when I heard the same insults, I remained calm. I even found a corner to sit down and let others look at me. I ate the cake while flipping to the original photos posted on the trending topics. The more I flipped, the more speechless I became. What kind of photos were these? They were so ugly and dark, compared with Viper beside them. She looked so helpless and full of a broken feeling. Among the 4 photos, 3 were of my unflattering angles. And one was of Viper leaving the classroom all wet. I didn't offend anyone. Viper came down gracefully from upstairs in a pure white little dress and delicate light makeup and stood beside me. "Sister, I also want to have a piece of dessert." After saying that, she looked at me timidly. I casually picked a piece of cake that I hated the most and handed it to her. Viper gently pinched the edge of the cake plate with her hand. When I let go, she also released her hand. The cake fell directly to the ground. Viper exclaimed, "Oops. I'm sore." I quickly interrupted her. "Oops. Viper. If you don't like it, you should have said so earlier. Don't act like a child. You'll make it difficult for the aunt." Before she could react, I bent down and picked up the cake on the ground with my bare hands and threw it into the trash can. Then I quickly took a few pieces of tissue and carefully wiped the sticky cream on the floor and on my hands. TSK. She's only been home for less than a year. And she's already so good at being capricious. She's really something. She has a small mind but a big temper. No wonder she was bullied. A few sarcastic remarks reached my ears. And Viper's face turned a little paler. Fickle, hadn't fulfilled my sigh, who came late, looked coldly at the people who had spoken, and then put Viper behind him, looking unhappy. So this trick is really effective. I'm so satisfied. Suddenly, there was some commotion at the gate of the Phoenix family. It seemed that reporters had come after hearing the news. The living room was full of people. There were guests to whom my mother had personally handed out the invitations, and reporters from different newspapers. The parents of both the Phoenix family and Fickle's family were all here. Fickle protected Viper, who had tears on her face, and stood aside, looking at me with his dark eyes without blinking. It was completely silent. "May I ask if Viper has anything to explain regarding the remarks on the internet?" The reporters' eyes were all fixed on me desperately. And the red dots of the cameras kept flashing. They didn't want to miss any of my expressions. After all, this is a very sensitive topic. Campus bullying is not a trivial matter at any time, and cannot be ignored or tolerated by society. Not to mention that the protagonists of the news event are dramatic biological sisters like me and Viper. In the hall where a pin drop could be heard, I suddenly burst out laughing. The sound was very abrupt. There's nothing to explain. I won't prove my innocence just because of a few blurry photos and one-sided words. All the reporters looked at each other in dismay. Dear reporters. As far as I know, the news that journalists get needs to be cross-checked and verified with the facts. However, now, in order to rush to report a sensational news story and gain traffic, you'd have directly skipped the most important steps of your work. For a moment, the reporters' faces turned red, but they still didn't let go of this opportunity. May I ask if Viper's lack of a clear attitude is to deliberately confuse the public's attention and achieve the effect of passing off the fake as the real? My father quickly reacted. He looked at the sharp-tongued reporter with a serious expression and asked the security guards at the door to drive this group of reporters out. After the crowd dispersed, my father called me into the study for a lecture. After closing the door, as soon as I turned around, my father threw a document at me. The hard cover of the document just grazed the corner of my forehead, and warm liquid flowed down my forehead. You bullied Viper and even let the reporters come to our door. You've really shamed our Phoenix family. My father's words, suppressing his anger, reached my ears. And the kind face in my memory also became ferocious. I picked up the document that had fallen on the ground and flipped through a few pages casually. It was all urgent notices to suppress the public opinion. I didn't refute. Looking at the messy pile of documents on his desk, we were at a stalemate for a long time. Dad. I'm sorry. My father rubbed his temples and looked back at me, sighing deeply. For the next 2 months, you will suspend your studies. Then you can directly take the college entrance examination. I asked the same question as in my previous life. Why don't you send me to study abroad? I don't want to stay here. I've asked Viper. She said she's very lonely studying alone in the country. And she said she can't bear to leave you. My father's expression was a little embarrassed. Presumably, he also knew how many rumors and gossips I would face if I stayed here. Of course, Viper couldn't bear to leave me. I'm going to be her tool to gain Fickle's favor in the future. I see. I put the folder on his desk and turned around and left. Not long after I entered the room, Viper knocked on the door and came in. She put on a pitiful look again. Sister, are you okay? I looked down at her. Didn't you say you couldn't bear to leave me? I stared into her eyes and approached her step by step. Then why didn't you tell the reporters how I skipped the exam to save you? And how did Fickle turn around and bully me to protect you? My dear sister, why didn't you tell the reporters these things? Instead, you're pretending to care about me now? Viper was forced back by me until she bumped into Fickle's chest, who was standing at the door. He put his arm around Viper's shoulder and looked at me with nothing but contempt in his eyes. Your own conduct is not good, so it's only natural that you were targeted by the reporters. Isn't it? Bad conduct? Deserved? I raised my hand and slapped him across the face, then smiled at him. You bullied me, and I hit you back. You also deserve it. Fickle touched his swollen cheek, and his dark eyes were cold. Presumably, because Viper was present. He swallowed his anger. Otherwise, just because of the slap I gave him, I would at least break an arm when I walked out of this room. I took out a stack of photos and threw them at Viper. The smile in my eyes didn't fade. Do you know why the reporters could enter the Phoenix family so easily? Of course. I invited them myself, my dear sister. Upon hearing this, both of their expressions changed, and their faces were filled with fear. Presumably, they didn't expect that all of this was a trap. I sat on the chair, admiring their wonderful expressions. A thrilling sense of pleasure rushed through my heart. I really didn't mean it, sister. Why won't you let me go? Viper accused me with tears in her eyes and squatted down to tear all the photos into pieces. Her shoulders kept shaking. Is that enough? If not, I have a lot more here. I pulled out another stack of photos from the drawer and threw them at them. The photos fluttered down to the ground, All of them showed my embarrassing moments. And the instigators were none other than Dipper and Fickle. There was no one else. No one could escape. Conditions. While gently stroking the crying viper in a soothing manner, Fickle said to me with suppressed anger, "I have only one request. Send me to SETI business school." Fickle's face paled a bit. Now he finally understood why I was always calm in the face of his bullying. Because I was gradually pulling him into the quagmire as well. "Phoenix. Don't be delusional. The admission requirements of SETI business school are very." "Is that so?" I interrupted Fickle impatiently. "Then why did Viper get into this school with grades even worse than mine? The reporters went back empty-handed today. If they knew that the vague bullying incident has such a dramatic reversal, would they give up? What's more, the main bully was still Fickle. The future heir of the Fickle family. The answer was definitely no. Viper obviously didn't want to give up this opportunity. She still had a tearful face, but her arms were clenched tightly. However, there was hesitation in Fickle's eyes, and his face still wore a mocking expression. "Phoenix, don't think that you can get rid of the fact that you bullied Viper like this. But now, you're the one asking me for help." I chuckled softly. I picked up my phone and, in front of the two of them, dialed the reporter's number. "Do 1. Do 2. Fine." Fickle looked at me darkly, as if he could devour me alive. I immediately smiled and hung up the phone. Before the other party could call back, I pulled out the SIM card from the phone, broke it, and threw it into the trash can. "You can deal with the rest as you like. I'm leaving early tomorrow morning." I casually threw the phone on the table and got up to leave. As I passed by Fickle, I sneered. "You clearly had a better way to solve the problem of Viper being bullied. But you insisted on helping her hurt me to fulfill your hero complex. You're incredibly stupid. You deserve to be at someone else's mercy now." I used to think that as long as I didn't provoke others, they wouldn't provoke me. In fact, I was completely wrong. Since that's the case, don't blame me for blocking all of Fickle and Viper's escape routes. I haven't even started to settle the scores for their cold indifference and deliberate frame-up. We still have a long way to go. As soon as I walked out of the room, my mother called me to the rooftop. She reached out and touched my forehead, her eyes full of tenderness and pity, and her voice already tinged with sobs. "Does it hurt?" "Actually, I don't like Viper. I always feel that she's not my child." While applying medicine to me, my mother suddenly blurted out such an out-of-the-blue sentence. In fact, I also knew that she wasn't my mother's child. Nor was she my sister. This so-called blood bond was just a setting imposed by the system to better complete the plot. I didn't say anything, but just hugged my mother. "Xiao Bao. You've grown up and are no longer my little sweetheart. I wish you could always be as innocent as you used to be." I wiped away the tears that oozed from the corners of my red eyes and smiled with relief. But if I'm too innocent, I'll be taken advantage of by bad people. Upon hearing this, she just sighed. Then I took my mother's hand. "Mom, was as a dough. Stay away from the Fickle family in the future." There was a lot of heartache in her eyes as she looked at me. And she immediately agreed. In the future, the Fickle family will have to cling to the Song family to survive. Fickle, who was so immersed in his research and seemed untouched by the world. How could I let such a thing happen? After a long time, I heard her voice scattered in the oncoming evening breeze. So clear. "Mom has always believed that Xiao Bao wouldn't do anything to bully her sister." I clenched my aching teeth. I was wrong. I wasn't fighting alone. Mom has always been the one who was most firmly on my side, cheering me on. Although it was silent, it was deafening. On the day I went abroad to study, I boarded the plane alone. Life abroad wasn't too unfamiliar to me. After all, in my previous life, before I married Fickle, I often traveled between various countries to attend academic discussion meetings. However, after marrying Fickle, I no longer had the time to study mathematics, which I loved. Instead, I had to shift my focus to learning finance in the company and take on the responsibility of leading the companies of the Song family and the Fickle family. But now, although I can't continue to delve deeply into mathematics, I can specialize in finance. Under the influence of my previous life, I have also developed a strong interest in it. spring turned to autumn. While I was often troubled by professional knowledge, Fickle had successfully graduated from a domestic university and won the favor of many professors. When Viper graduated from university, she received an invitation to participate in a film directed by a famous director in the entertainment industry and became a national actress. The relationship between the two of them also progressed very smoothly. They frequently made it to the trending topics. They were jokingly called a perfect couple by netizens and received the attention and blessings of the whole internet. As for me, by taking advantage of my professional advantages, I attracted a lot of investments and made the small company I established abroad develop more and more smoothly. Soon, what animal sigh? It was time for the most important time note in my previous life. After I offended Professor John by defending Fickle, the entire professor circle in the university showed a cold attitude towards Fickle. He didn't say anything, but he seemed to be getting more and more annoyed with me. And his eyes became colder and colder. In order to take the initiative to ease the relationship between me and him, I used all my connections to obtain an invitation to a very famous physics academic seminar held in Catalonia. To prepare for this conference, I picked up the most headache-inducing physics textbook and started to study it page by page from the beginning. At the conference, I was indeed embarrassed by a physics professor with blue eyes. But then the sun lied down and our Professor Plagiarist stepped forward to help me. To thank him, I funded his research and successfully introduced Fickle to Plagiarist, making them colleagues. The two of them published a paper on the experimental results in the Physical Review Letters PRL. Since then, he has risen to fame in the physics academic circle and became the admired Fickle. What I didn't expect was that Fickle suddenly came to the UK to find me while he was in Catalonia for a conference. There was a persistent knocking at the door, which was kept under control. Remembering the sadness in Fickle's eyes when he looked at me these days and the way he always followed behind me, this wasn't something the unruly Fickle in his youth would do. Instead, it was more like the future Fickle. I was able to be reborn. So perhaps he could be too. So I opened the door. Fickle was a bit stunned and stared straight into my eyes with an unprecedented intensity. We looked at each other without speaking. He withdrew his thin wrist that was knocking on the door and said in a steady voice, "Long time no see." I frowned and wanted to close the door. He clumsily blocked the door, and a few ripples appeared in his usually cold eyes. This unfamiliar look somehow reminded me of the celebration banquet I held after successfully passing the college entrance examination in my previous life. Fickle saw my diary, which recorded all the moments when I was attracted to him. After everyone left, I opened the door with a plate of his favorite chocolate, tiramisu, in my hand. But what greeted me was the hardcover diary being thrown in my face by Fickle, which then knocked over the cake and made it roll on the ground. His cold voice sounded, "Phoenix, your love makes me sick." Fickle stood up, stepped on the diary, and passed me by. "Because you're selfish and jealous. Viper's love letter was wrongly placed. Now she's far abroad and has blocked all my contact information. Are you satisfied?" I didn't cry. I just threw the diary and the cake into the trash can and asked him, "Then won't you go find her? Your love is also quite cheap." Hearing this, he paused, immediately rushed out of the room, booked a flight ticket half an hour later, and left right away. But Viper never met him. He returned to the country in a sorry state and then devoted himself to research. From then on, the bright moon hung high, and no one could match or interfere with him. "Phoenix, this might be a chance given to us by heaven to start over." "Start over?" I sneered, let go of the hand that was about to close the door, and leaned against the door frame. "Fine." Then I took out my phone and made a call. "If you want to start over, first solve the campus bullying incident. If you tell the reporter all the details of the matter, I can give you this chance." Before the call was connected, Fickle hurriedly hung up, his eyes evasive. I can't risk Vipers and my future. Just then, my roommate came out of the adjacent bedroom and waved her phone at me. "Why did you suddenly call me?" I shook my head. "No. I accidentally pressed the wrong button." Fickle's eyes were completely flustered, and there was a bit more annoyance in them. The color faded from his lips. Before he could speak, I immediately closed the door and locked it. "Get lost. Don't show up in my sight again in the future. Your love makes me feel sick. Fickle probably knew that there was no chance for us anymore. So he stood downstairs for a day and a night before driving away. I knew that from then on. Fickle wouldn't come to find me again. Fickle's pride wouldn't allow him to do such a down and out thing a second time. Half a month before the conference, after getting the invitation, I arrived in Catalonia. It was a rainy night. I was on my way to the hotel according to the map, but I saw a very familiar face at the street corner. It was the down-and-out plagiarist. He was holding a tall and thin girl in his arms in the rain, his face full of pleading. Allied. This paper is really important to me. Please let me publish it. The girl broke free from his embrace and slapped him across the face. I did the whole experiment by myself. And I typed out the paper word by word. What right do you have to ask me to give this paper to you and let you use it as a stepping stone to fame? Ignoring the gazes of the passers-by, plagiarist directly knelt down in front of her. Tears and snot streaming down his face. Allied. Please. Save me. You can't let the child in your belly suffer. Can you? The girl's face was cold. I won't let you mess around anymore. You're not the plagiarist who loved physics that I used to like. Now you only care about fame and fortune. You're not the plagiarist I knew before. Let's break up. I'll go have an abortion by myself. With that said, the girl turned around and left. The plagiarist looked dejectedly at the girl's retreating figure. He swayed but failed to stand up and fell to the ground. Looking at the down-and-out plagiarist, I immediately understood everything. So he had stolen someone else's achievements. No wonder he didn't dare to publish his thesis in an authoritative magazine, and had even given half of the authorship to Fickle. Moreover, I vaguely remembered that in my previous life, there was a news report about a woman in Catalonia who committed suicide due to depression after her research results were stolen and difficult to retrieve. However, this news was soon drowned out by the praises for Fickle and the plagiarist. Since then, I have never heard of the existence of this girl named Allied in the physics community again. I quickly caught up with Allied, held an umbrella over her head, and handed her a pack of tissues. Miss. Wipe your tears. The dirt like him isn't worth your tears. Allied turned around. Her eyes red. She took the tissues from me and thanked me sincerely. I took her to a hotel. Standing at the door, she hesitated for a moment and then asked, "Why? Are you helping me?" Allied. I envy you for being able to freely pursue the career you love. I really like mathematics. But due to some uncontrollable factors, I had to miss the opportunity to engage in it. Allied. Go and pursue what you want. I can provide you with the funds, connections, and other resources you need. I just hope you can do me a small favor. I won't interfere with anything that rightfully belongs to you. The girl's eyes sparkled with brilliance. Yet she was hurt by the selfishness of the person she loved. I don't know if she was as sad and lonely as I was at the end of her fate in the previous life. But in this life, I hope to save her sincere heart for physics. The day I returned to China was the day when Fickle became an instant hit in the country after successfully publishing his thesis. Originally, having fulfilled my obsession, this day should have been the day when Viper died in an airport accident. It seems that she gave up going home and chose to be with Fickle instead. As soon as I got off the plane and saw Viper's delicate and charming face on the airport billboard, I smiled mockingly. This time, I'm making a strong comeback from abroad and determined to take back everything that belongs only to me. I got into the car and rushed back to the song group to revise the plan. The bidding meeting 5 days later is a great opportunity to defeat the Fickle family. After all, in my previous life, I gave this opportunity to the declining Fickle family and saved it from the brink of collapse. Since I gave the opportunity to the Fickle family in the previous life, then in this life, the Fickle family shouldn't come to compete with me. I stayed up for 3 consecutive nights alone in the company, constantly optimizing the plan to ensure that Phoenix could become the winning bidder at one go. On the 4th day, my name, along with that of the song group and the small company Phoenix I established, suddenly occupied the top 3 positions on the trending search list. The bully sister from back and has become the founder of Phoenix, Miss Phoenix of the Goo Group, bullying her younger sister Viper. The light boat has passed thousands of mountains, looking at the first and second trending topics. which showed videos of Viper leading the lecture hall all dirty, and of her pulling at my clothes to apologize to me. I slowly smiled. The latest Weibo post by Viper was a reply to this video. The light boat has passed thousands of mountains. And it successfully made it to the 3rd position on the trending search list. She really was in a hurry when she heard I was back. Was she so eager to take action? Phoenix. What should we do? It seems that the bid inviter is going to cancel our bidding qualification. Alide rushed into the office in a hurry. Her eyes red with anxiety. I gave her a reassuring look, took out a light purple invitation from the drawer, and after packing up all the materials, I said to Alide, "Alide, trust me. Only with a reversal can this story become more exciting." The invitation was sent to me by my high school teacher for the school anniversary. Coincidentally, Viper also took this opportunity to live stream a donation to our alma mater on the entire network to increase her national popularity and gain the favor of the general public. The public opinion on the internet completely fermented, and the shares of Phoenix dropped by 3 percentage points in just one afternoon. In the bustling and lively banquet hall, glasses clinked, and the place was magnificent. Viper was still wearing a white dress, just like the pure and unattainable first love in her youth. She stood on the auditorium stage, softly thanking her alma mater, teachers, classmates, and fans. The live stream comments were all filled with messages praising Viper for being gentle and cute. Viper, fly forward, and the cranberries will always be with you. Is the bully sister here too? Why doesn't she just die? My wife is bringing honor to us all. Excuse me, had infostel wind session. Excuse me, hug our baby. It's been hard graduating from high school. The next part of the program was for the school to play the blessing video for the 120th anniversary of the school. Viper walked down from the auditorium stage. Her eyes curved as she looked at the gradually dimming large screen. At this moment, a romance novel was coming to an end. A male and female protagonist were getting engaged and were being blessed by the entire network, while the female supporting character was being condemned by the whole network for bullying the female lead in high school and falling from the heights into the mud. But I have never considered myself a supporting character in this story. The large screen in front of Viper gradually showed an image. It was a very hidden and blurry image. A fan and small figure leaned into the piano box at the bottom of the piano and cut the strings with a pair of scissors. It was accompanied by the girl's curse. That bitch Phoenix still wants to compete with me for Fickle. She really thinks she's the female lead. It's so ridiculous. I've cut all the strings for you. Let's see what you can play with. She's always flirting around. So shameless. In addition to the evidence that was burned by those two people at that time, I also had a surveillance video as my trump card. The sharp and savage voice was unmistakably Viper's voice. That's not me. It's a video deliberately synthesized by Phoenix. Viper jumped up from her seat and tried to turn off a live streaming camera but was stopped by the relevant personnel. Can't you fight for what you want on your own? The video was still playing. In the large screen, Viper was shouting abuse at her junior sister, whom she claimed to have taken good care of outside. You idiot. You're just dragging me down. If you want it, go and grab it. Otherwise, how do you think I've managed to stay in this circle? The crowd at the scene gasped in surprise. The live stream comments were scrolling rapidly. Eat the food with the bowl and then scold the hand that feeds you. How could Phoenix frame you? It's making me want to vomit from laughter. Professional appraisal, this video is not synthesized, but it must have been secretly filmed. At the same time, the trending search list was also dominated by Fickle and Viper. The most popular CP oatmeal is popular again. Does Viper have something on her mind for falsely accusing others of bullying? Watching the number of comments rising rapidly, I walked up to Viper, who was sitting on the ground at a loss. Viper, you said I smeared you with dirt. What a pity. I don't touch that dirty stuff. If I were to pour something on you, it would be a glass of red wine worth 10,000 yuan. I raised my hand high and poured all the wine in the glass over Viper's head, looking at her embarrassed appearance. I smiled wickedly and then avoided the camera and whispered in her ear. It was a ridiculous and stupid decision for you to give up going home and choose Fickle. The remaining shred of reason in Viper's eyes finally shattered. I casually threw the goblet aside and turned to leave. 1 step. 2 steps. 3 steps. Phoenix. You bitch. Viper's scream pierced the quiet air at the party. The pain I expected didn't come. Instead, I fell into a warm and restless embrace. The faint fragrance of rosewood surrounded my whole body. It was Fickle who had blocked that knife for me. I turned my head and saw that his white shirt under the suit was stained bright red with blood. She was at a loss, covering the wound on Fickle's abdomen and crying bitterly. I stood aside, not even giving Fickle a glance. I just smiled at Viper and said, Viper, the crime of intentional homicide is enough to send you to prison for several years. No. The dilated pupils in Viper's eyes gradually became focused. There was a lot more fear in her gaze towards me. And she let out a shrill scream. A few minutes later, Fickle's physics thesis was officially identified as plagiarized and infringing by the official of the PRL magazine. And he and the plagiarist were prohibited from further studying in the academic circle. He was once again successfully associated with Viper on the trending search list. The golden boy and the jade girl have become the band boy, and the imprisoned girl the girlfriend has become the cellmate. It's my turn to have the overflowing red wine. I looked down at the trending topics on my phone that were rising rapidly and felt a little confused. I blinked my eyes, which were stinging. I did it. Even if I had to be an enemy of the whole world. I did it. I sniffled and held back the tears welling up in my eyes. And I composed myself a bit and rushed to the bidding meeting site. Because the bullying incident was clarified, the shares of Phoenix gradually recovered. I spoke eloquently at the bidding meeting and skillfully resolved the bid inviters' doubts and difficulties. So when the winning bid company was announced, Phoenix undoubtedly won the bid. Thanks to this order, Phoenix gradually opened up the domestic clothing market and became a new generation of cutting-edge company. I received a call from Fickle's mother, asking me to visit Fickle. I pushed open his door. The room was pitch black without a single ray of light. Phoenix? Why are you here? Fickle was blinded by the light shining in from the door. And his face looked tired. I kept my hand on the doorknob and didn't move. Auntie asked me to come and see you. Phoenix. Did you ever like me? He suddenly asked me. And then laughed self-deprecating lie. I regret it. I regret misunderstanding you in the previous life for wrongly placing Viper's love letter. You liked me very much at that time. But I hated you for many years because of that misunderstanding. I watched infuriately as you died. At the end of his sentence, his voice was already choked with sobs. Indeed, in the previous life, Fickle wasn't so full of hostility. He just watched infuriately the affairs between me and Viper. He watched as I was pushed step by step into the abyss of no return by his first love. Looking at the scars on his wrist, I sneered. So he had been reborn. Was he heartbroken because he couldn't bear the fact that no one was willing to sacrifice for his research? And then he remembered my kindness. Was that why he blocked the knife for me at the party? It was really ridiculous. Never. I regret opening your secret base when I was a child. And I also regret standing up for you and becoming your first love. Fickle. Because of your malice. I died in that car accident. I always stood in the light and never stepped into his darkness. After you died, was there a child between us? I didn't answer the phone on purpose that time. Looking at his eyes filled with sadness, I smiled softly. Yes. I rushed to see you just to tell you this good news. Fickle. When will you repay the life you owe me? After saying that, I turned around and left, ignoring Fickle's wailing and regret behind me. Sorry, Auntie. I said this to Fickle's mother. But there was no trace of guilt in my heart. Because I couldn't imagine how heartbroken my mother must have been when she heard the news of my death in the previous life. Less than half an hour after I got home, I saw in the property management group that someone had posted a message saying that someone had jumped off the building on the 37th floor of Building C. The 37th floor. They must have died a horrible death, right? It was almost the same as how I died in the previous life. As for the child? I made it up. That pregnancy test kit was broken. The sentencing result for Viper also came out. 10 years in prison with a 5-year probation. The police said that Viper wanted to see me. So, separated only by a layer of glass window, I met her. I told her with some regret. Fickle. has passed away. He couldn't bear the burden and couldn't stand his own failure. Upon hearing my words, Viper suddenly went crazy. Why? Why did it turn out like this? I clearly had the system in my hands. I should have become the female lead. Why are you still so successful? I'm not willing. I'm not willing. She kept shaking her head and tearing at her ears. And blood flowed all over her hands. Looking at her, I felt an inexplicable sense of desolation in my heart. Leaning on the glass table, I said, "Live well. I'm waiting for you to take revenge on me." Suddenly, my phone rang. It was Allied. I quickly quickened my pace and walked out of the prison. She was standing not far away, leaning against the car door, and asked me loudly, "What should we eat tonight to celebrate?" Looking at the unrestrained look at the corners of her eyes, I laughed out loud. Behind her was a sunset as red as blood, just as beautiful as the morning sun. I took a step forward and ran towards her. And also towards the sunset and the morning sun that belonged only to me. The end.